Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. Can I draw everyone's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the Market car park adjacent to the Civic Centre building. Please do not return to the building unless given permission by council staff. Okay. Well, thank you for everyone for coming this evening. And I'm just going to ask for people to introduce themselves because we have a number of auditors here, independent persons, and a whole array. So if we could just start with Elizabeth and work our way along, if you could just introduce yourself and your role. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, sorry, it's loud. My name is Elizabeth Jackson. I'm the partner from Ernst & Young, the external auditor.
Hello, my name is Andrew Billingham. I'm the internal audit manager and I manage the internal audit plan, and I'm from BDO.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Aaron Winter. I'm the partner for BDO Internal Audit Team and your head of internal audit.
Councillor Ian Ward. I'm Vice Chairman of this committee.
I'm Oksana Seshchuk. I'm Civic Officer.
Evening, David Dickinson, Strategic Director, Resources.
Hi, Richard Lutterman. I'm an accountant who worked with Steve, who's hiding at the back there on the accounts.
Hello, I'm Janine Hooksey, independent member.
Thank you very much for introducing yourself. So, councillors, would you just like to introduce yourselves? Yeah. So the millions watching know who's here.
Councillor Angelina Marriott, Roach South.
Good evening, Councillor Vilma Wilson.
Yeah, good evening, Councillor David Sharp, Trinity Ward, Rayleigh.
Councillor Stuart Wilson, Holbridge Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Stanley, Dan Hall and Rory Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. And I'm Councillor Booth, Chair of this committee. Okay, thank you for doing that. So we move on to item 1, apologies for absence. I've received the following apologies from 2 councillors, Councillor Bob Milne and Councillor James Newport. I understand that Councillor Stanley has very kindly agreed to stand in for Councillor Newport tonight. Okay, any other apologies or substitutions? No, thank you, members. Okay, item 2, to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of January 2026. Agreed. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? If you are declaring an interest, please state the interest and the reason why you are declaring such an interest. No, thank you, members. Item 4, questions from the public. We don't have any. So, moving to the main body of the agenda, item 5, the accounts and report of the external auditor. The report begins on page 15. So, is it David and Richard that are presenting this report?
Thank you, Chair. I'll let Liz go through all the main points of the audit, but I'll just like to say a big thank you to Richard and to Steve at the back there, and to the rest of the team for producing the accounts, working with the auditors, and getting us to the position where we're at now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So this is our audit results report for the 24-25 accounts, which are obviously included on the agenda for your approval tonight. I'll just take you through the exec summary, just to explain kind of the process that we've gone through, and then the audit report that I'll be issuing. So the work is complete, bar receiving the final signed documents tomorrow, once after the approval tonight. The audit is complete. The findings are set out in this report. We've got a small number of audit differences that have been amended, none of which were material. So it was a really good quality set of draft financial statements that were prepared by officers and submitted for audit. We've got one unadjusted difference, which for those of you who are kind of used to this process, it relates to the investment assets from the pension fund, Essex Pension Fund. That is a balance we've discussed with officers about amending, but actually it's best not to, because it's an estimation technique at the pension fund and therefore outside of the council's own control. It's not your own figure, it's from the actuary and therefore your share of it. So I proposed, although I ask as part of the letter of rep for you to amend it, I don't actually require you to do so. We've then set out in the report all of the risks that we've identified in the year, and they relate to the estimation areas as you'd expect. All that work's complete, and obviously the results are reported within here. We've identified one control observation, and that relates to a table in a second that I'll talk through, and that's just around the information provided by your expert valuer for your valuation of your property, plant and equipment, your assets. That's just, we've disagreed with some of the assumptions or not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence over some of those assumptions, and therefore in Appendix B of this report we have something called the Summary of Assurances, and that's each of the areas of the accounts and whether it's red, amber or green. And you'll have noticed from reviewing that part of the report around PPE, the property, plant and equipment, is red, and that means I'm giving no assurance in respect to that balance in 24-25. We've discussed with officers and raised a recommendation just kind of how improvements can be made for 25-26. And then probably one of the tables to draw your attention to is on your page 28 of the pack and my page 10. And it's just around the process for, we called it the execution of the audit, but actually the preparation of the financial statements, the engagement from officers, the quality of the working papers, and you'll be pleased to see that majority of those are effective, and therefore we've classified them as green. And that means that actually you did everything you could as a council to engage with the audit, and the only one around requires improvement is around that control observation, around that property, plant and equipment valuation, and just ensuring that the assumptions used by your valuer can be kind of backed up and are corroborated by us with third-party confirmation. The only other area to carry is your value for money. We didn't identify any risks of significant weakness in 24-25, and there were no actual weaknesses, and therefore you've got no exception reporting. You've got, what, for the best one to the word, an unqualified value for money, which is obviously the best position to be in as a council. And then probably just ending with the actual audit report, because it's slightly confusing over the last couple of years. It's called a disclaimer audit report. So that means I'm giving no assurance on the financial statements, even though I've completed the audit of 24-25 as set out in that Appendix B. That's the result of the unaudited accounts from 22-23, and therefore we are building assurance back. As you can obviously see from the effective table I've just demonstrated, I'm expecting that to move to a qualified opinion next year, and therefore qualified next year, and therefore unqualified the following year. The majority of local government is in a disclaimer position or a qualified position, and therefore it's not alone. You're not alone, and it's not a representation of Rochford as a council. It is about the local government reset and recovery and the wider national position. And therefore I'll stop and take any questions.
Okay, so I think Councillor Ward, and then we'll go to Councillor Marriott, okay?
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. You've answered a lot of the questions that I originally set down to ask, and I think you've covered them very well. One of the items on there was the grant, which has to be paid back. You noticed that, and I believe it has no effect. Have you got anything you want to say further on that grant, or does that need to go to the 151 officer?
It can probably go to the 151 officer, but effectively it was just you got given money that wasn't yours, and therefore you have to repay it. But finance might be able to put more articulate answer.
And so that has no overall effect on our accounts. Okay, that's good. I was concerned about how the how can I put it, our assets were looked at, and you did mark that up as simply a fact that you didn't necessarily agree because you didn't have any, how can I put it, proper accounting of how they arrived at their figures. Would that be a proper assessment?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, that probably is a proper assessment. Just to give it a bit more kind of background to it, we obviously select a sample of assets across the different asset types that you hold in the different valuation methodologies, and we need to corroborate each of the assumptions used by the valuer to arrive at the valuation to other sources, so kind of independent indices, rates, and there's lots of different things that are judged by the valuer to make it up. One of them, say for car parks, is an easy one to kind of get our heads around. There's different elements that go into that car park valuation, and we couldn't corroborate. They weren't using the data that we would expect them to have used, i.e. your own data, and therefore we said we weren't happy with that approach, and we couldn't corroborate it. So I think it is an estimation technique, and there is always a difference between, say, what we think and what others think valuers. There's often differences in opinion between us, but there were just some inputs that we couldn't then verify.
If I can highlight one other item, Chairman. The disclaimer. Yes, I have noticed that there are a lot of councils throughout the UK who are in this same position where they just haven't been able to get the accounts right for whatever reason. So we're not alone in that, and that's an important observation, I think. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, so all your questions been answered there, Councillor Ward?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So, Councillor Marriott.
Chairman, I believe mine are in the same area as Councillor Ward's. It's page 42, and it says an asset totaling £123,000, 646 that the council was unable to prove was still in operational use. I was just curious as to what asset that was, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay, can anyone enlighten us on what asset that was? Thank you.
It was some play equipment. I don't know whereabouts in the district the play equipment was. It was funded by a grant many, many years ago. And it had sat on our fixed asset register, and it shouldn't have done. It should have been. We were able to verify that the equipment had been removed.
Thank you.
So let me just get that clear in my thinking. It was from play equipment from ages ago, but the play equipment has now been removed, or that figure has been removed from the accounting?
Both.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a large document to get through. The first thing is that, does it show anywhere in this document the losses that have been made over the past 2 years in the accounts, and what are the financial gains that we have or should be receiving from our residents? In other words, there's debts to be paid, and where does it show that in these documents, and where are we going to get those from in relation to our expenditures?
Right, so let me just clarify, Councillor Stanley. Is the question, do we have any debts?
Yes.
And how those debts going to be repaid?
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Can I pass that to the relevant person? Is that you, David, or? Yep.
Where can I find that in the document?
Yep. To Richard, thank you.
There's a note, and I'm just trying to find it for you. Yeah, you bear with me. Everybody's waiting for me. I can't find it. Go to the balance sheet. On the balance sheet. Okay, if you have a look at page 87 of the agenda. Which is the balance sheet. And then if you run down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 headings, you'll come to short-term debtors. So as at the 31st of March 2020, short-term debtors. That's people who owe the council, people or organisations who owe the council money. And you can see as at the 31st of March, that was just over 3 million. It was about 400,000 higher than the previous year. And you'll see that next to short-term debtors, it says note 18. So if we go to note 18, which is on page 104, you'll see that short-term debtors, it doesn't give you a huge amount of detail. Trade receivables, so that's receivable from organisations, is 258,000. Prepayments where people have paid ahead for services, goods or services that they haven't yet received, is 159,000. And then other receivable amounts. And within the other receivable amounts are debtors for local taxation. So you can see 31st of March 25, the local taxation arrears were 750,000. Yeah.
Are you satisfied with that explanation, Councillor Stanley? Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Sharp?
Yes, thank you. May I ask the officers the reason for the delay in the provision of the PPE information?
Okay, you may. So,
I have.
Have we got any explanation?
So do you mean delay the valuation information being provided to the council by the valuer? I don't believe there was any delay. I believe we provided it when it was requested.
If you'd like me to come in, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth.
So it wasn't delayed information, it was responses from the valuer not being sufficient and appropriate for me to be able to reach a conclusion on that evidence. So, for example, one of the elements was around, without getting kind of boringly technical, around obsolescence, and you have to have an obsolescence figure as part of the valuation of an asset. They'd considered one element of the three functions of obsolescence that are set out in the guidance for RICS qualified valuers to follow. That was a formula driven on a spreadsheet. And obsolescence, for example, is taken actually around kind of the use of the building, the economic benefit of the building, what your plans to do with the building are, the physical obsolescence of it actually does it need rebuild, rework, kind of capital spend. And therefore, we don't think it's appropriate to derive that from a formula on a spreadsheet that is generic for all assets that are valued. And we think it should be on an individual asset by asset basis. That's just an example of where we got evidence, but I'm saying, for me signing my name on an audit report, that isn't sufficient appropriate.
Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, that's a very technical explanation, but I think I followed it. Thank you.
Okay, I think what I heard is you didn't receive all the information you'd hoped to receive from that. It wasn't delayed in the information. The information was incomplete. Yep, okay, thank you. So can I just ask questions around the, just shy of £300,000 the council was paid incorrectly? Have we still got that money, or has it now been paid back to the Department for Housing?
Yes, the money went into a reserve and was held there because we weren't really sure what it was for, and it was ultimately paid in error by the government, so we've paid that back from the reserve.
So I'm guessing we did earn some interest.
A bit, yeah.
A bit is better than nothing. So I don't sense there is any more questions from my colleagues in the chamber. So we now vote on, I noticed that one of the recommendations is actually something we need to vote on, and recommendation 2 is that we note the report, okay? So can I just seek clarification? Just on one. Okay, so we're voting on recommendation 1. Let me just read that out. That the committee delegates to the chair of the committee, in consultation with the strategic director resources, the authority to finalise the approval process for the statement of accounts, including agreeing any further necessary changes to the accounts once the auditor's work is completed. Oh my goodness, the responsibility. Okay, Councillor Ward is seconding that. Can we have a vote, members? All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. So recommendation 2 is for noting that the committee notes that the auditors intend to issue a disclaimed opinion in line with the planned approach to rebuilding assurance following the issues in the local government audit system in recent years. And so is that noted, members? Yep. And just to assure everyone, we're not alone in being in that position as a local authority. Hey. Moving on to item 6. Internal audit update. This part of the report begins on page 167 in your agenda pack. David Dickinson will present this update, and then we'll hear from the internal auditors on the audit process and follow-up reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand straight over to the internal auditors.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everybody. So we have 3 reports as 3 separate appendices, so we will take each one in turn. I'm happy to stop there and take questions before moving on to the next one. So our first report is the progress of our internal audit plan for 25-26. And since our last committee meeting in January, we've completed a further review, which is in the pack, and Andrew's going to present that as the third appendix. The health and safety report remains in draft, but we're working with management, working through their updates and ensuring that we get some pragmatic and sensible recommendations to address some of the issues that we've identified. So once that's finalised, that will also come to the next committee meeting. The bulk of work is in field work, and you can see there that a lot of it was back-ended into the last quarter of the financial year and started either in December or in January. So we're working very hard with management to ensure that we get all of that work done this quarter to wrap up, obviously, our work in relation to those 4 reviews. And that just leaves 2 reviews that we've been planning and have agreed scopes for. And both of those are late additions to our plan. So members may recall at the last meeting, the Vice Chair asked us to do some work on the supplier spend as part of some of the additional days that we had spare. So we've been working with management to agree that, and we're commencing that work. And the same for the project management review as well. That was an additional review that was replaced deferred audit. So I'd just like to reassure the committee and members that whilst we've got a back-ended plan this year, that was a result of obviously the re-procurement of the internal audit service and us only getting a plan agreed from July. So we did lose our first quarter. But to ensure that doesn't happen again in 26, 27, the next meeting we'll be bringing the plan for next year along so we can get that approved before the start of April. So then we've obviously gained a further 3 months of the year to start work. I'll stop there on the progress of the plan before I move on to the follow-up report for any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. So, any questions from elected members? Councillor Sharp.
Has the officers ever considered undertaking an audit of the response times by officers to councillors' queries?
Okay, thank you for that question. I don't know if it's slightly loaded in some way, but we'll move forward with that. Okay, so anyone want to come back?
Well, they do come to CLT, and we do review them regularly and ask the officers to speed up their responses. And there has been a significant improvement over the last year and a half. We won't necessarily look at specifically auditing that, but we can provide a report outlining where there are delays and provide a bit more detail behind what might drive those delays. Sometimes the delays are due to other work pressures, or there could just be other issues. So we can sort of expand on why there might be delays, but I wouldn't necessarily, unless it was a key request from members, wouldn't necessarily have an audit of that. We could just report it in a separate part of the report.
Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I wouldn't wish to unnecessarily add to the burden. It is quite a burden, the internal audit. The progress behind it, I think, overall is good. But I have asked that question because I've had problems in getting timely responses to comments and or questions that I've raised of officers.
So, Councillor Sharp, can I just ask you, what would be your expectation of a timely response?
I would have thought within 7 or within 5 working days.
Thank you for that. I don't think that's unreasonable. So you're stating there's times when you haven't received a response?
With several honourable exceptions, invariably, 2 weeks or more. And I have to chase.
Well, that is slightly concerning to hear. So perhaps that's something, if you don't mind, Councillor Sharp, myself and my Vice Chair will take outside of this meeting. Councillor Ward? Yeah.
If I can... yeah, we can take it outside. There's also an area of concern, exactly as you've pointed out, and you're going to find that area of concern on page 198, which is highlighted, which actually says and speaks to the question you have just asked about response times and about everything to do with it. And it is an area of concern, and we will definitely highlight that, and that may even need to be called into scrutiny, whoever is with that. And I think that wouldn't be such a bad idea to actually ask, why isn't it happening? Although I do know in the report that a lot of the things will be finalised, hopefully, by the end of March. I think that's your end date that you've put in the report, that you hope to finalise. Everything should come to fruition by the end of March. Please.
Thank you, Aaron.
Just to clarify, that date is driven by management, obviously. So we've made the recommendations for the improvements around the members' inquiry. That is what management have accepted. There's a timescale to get that in place. Just to give some reassurance, that's a report. That's our third appendix, the report on the members' inquiries. That was an internal review that we did to support the enhancements of the control environment, including the timeliness of responding, but also the consistency of requests coming in and ensuring that they're getting tracked and delivered in that timescale. So actually it was seen as an area of concern, hence why we looked at it to support management to improve that.
Okay. Councillor Sharp, do you wish to add anything? No. So I'm feeling slightly more reassured now, but I think that's an important point about bringing it to scrutiny. And perhaps I'll talk to the chair as vice chair of that committee. Perhaps we'll have a look at that. Okay, Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I don't know whether we are obstructions or trying to clear the air with the street cleansing people. Unfortunately, it's become apparent that just throwing the waste bins, and that's food waste bins, just throwing them down isn't quite and I have spoken to Caroline about this before, that the waste bins seem to be dotted all over the place and not put back in the properties that they're taken from when they're emptied. They're just laid out on the ground, whether the wind blows it or somebody kicks them into the street, into the traffic. It's getting somewhat annoying to residents. Plus the fact that due to the fact of I don't know if Norths have got any smaller vehicles to go around the side streets, not the main roads, but the side streets where people are parking, and the vehicles seem to be tearing up the grass verges, especially in my street where several neighbours have complained, even though they do park on the road, the lorries do tend to be wider than what the driver thinks and driving over the grass verges. I wonder if we're having street cleansing complaints of who is responsible for this, and that is something which hasn't been brought to light on this document, I don't think. So if that's something that can be brought to light with the street cleansing people, then that would be, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Yes, I have witnessed myself the speed with which people work, and they do tend to just leave the little kitchen waste bins all over the place. And that's something actually some of my neighbours have raised with me as well. In terms of larger vehicles, I have witnessed a smaller vehicle being used to collect the kitchen waste. That's not the enormous dust carts we normally think of in that situation, but I think they are just only used for the kitchen waste. But I'm sure that's something we can highlight to the appropriate person, just to relay some of the concerns of residents regarding that, because it goes beyond unsightliness to sometimes being unsafe for those residents that might be slightly disabled or walking with sticks, or parents with prams, to navigate some of these bins that are strewn all over the place.
Just to come back, Chair, if I may, in my street alone, there were 2 bins in the middle of the road, which the traffic had to manoeuvre around, and obviously they weren't put back in the properties where they are disposed of the waste. But it is the larger recycle bins that are collected, either the green bin or the recyclable material. The lorries are just too big for these roads that we've got cars parking in the road. Obviously, if they're not right up against the curb and a foot off the curb, that means the lorry's got to go up the grass verge. And we've just had from Essex County Council the curbstones replaced because lots of them were damaged, and we're still doing it, and we're going to find ourselves paying for that again. And I just wondered if we could get something done about that. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley, we hear your petition regarding that, and Councillor Ward and myself will make appropriate inquiries, particularly I think about on the safety issue, the small bins being left strewn all over the place. I suspect the size of vehicles is something more profound that others will need to consider. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 points I wish to raise, so if I do one at a time. One of my favourite topics is on page 188 to 192, which is overdue recommendations. I note that the longest outstanding due date was actually April 24. Nearly 2 years is quite a while to get things sorted, and whilst I understand that the first overdue recommendation is something that the council needs to negotiate with an outside company, 2 years is a very long time. I note the other overdue, used to be outstanding in my language, the other overdue recommendations tend to be all HR based. What are we doing about that? I would also just like to note that there are fewer outstanding recommendations than there have been previously, so that is good news. But unfortunately, the top one is just too long, and I don't think that's acceptable. Chair, would you like to deal with that one first, and then I'll come back?
Yes, please. So we're talking about the fly tipping, are we?
We are, yes.
Councillor Wilson. Yeah, like you, I've noted that there are less outstanding actions to be completed, which is to be celebrated, but still some of them seem to be hanging around for an awful long time. So we'll go to why we've got some recommendations that seem to be 2 years overdue. Anyone on? Okay, let's hear your view.
So obviously the ownership of implementing recommendations is for management. So our role as internal auditors is to be independent of that and obviously come to this committee. So you're doing the right thing by raising it to you to show that there has been delay and therefore challenging management. There is a little bit of uniqueness around these recommendations that they are overlapping internal auditors. So I must admit we're not responsible for these recommendations. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we're getting clarity that those dates, so that fly tipping date hasn't moved since we last reported to you in terms of that revised date, and we've had assurances that that date will remain the date that will be met, hence us saying that it's not changed. The only ones that have slipped are those HR ones that are pretty much there, and actually in January I said they would be complete, but there's been some minor changes and amendments to some of the policies which are deemed to be, will be completed and ratified by the new date, and we've been given assurances from HR on that. So actually that was post the paper deadline. So those 5 HR ones are all on track to be completed, and we've been given dates of actually for some of the training dates that have been planned as well. So I'm answering for management, but actually we've got evidence behind this report that is showing that we are nearly there with the overdue recommendations, but we never remove them until we see that evidence to obviously give you that insight and an ability to challenge management as to why there's been delays. What's pleasing, and I know it's only one completed recommendation, but the recommendations that we're now agreeing in this current year are being completed on time. And I think that's where we're working with management to come up with realistic and pragmatic timescales. And actually the actions are pragmatic. So some of these where you are working with a third party, you can't put a date on that until you've negotiated and discussed with them. So I think what's happened is that's occurred. Probably an indicative date has been given, which wasn't achievable in the first place. And now we're getting under the skin to understand what is realistic and when they will happen.
Councillor Wilson, does that answer your first question?
Yes, Chair, thank you. And can I just say it's pleasing to know that the agreed renewal dates are with confidence. So that's great. Thank you.
Would you like to move to your second point?
I would do, thank you. And it is something that has already been raised. I didn't wish to interrupt the flow of conversation at the time, but if we go back to page 198, actually, I just wish to point out that the members' portal is now in existence. It is very early days. I have used it. I'd love to give you an example. Unfortunately, there was a form I neglected to complete, so I'm still waiting for my response, which is day 5 today, and it's a bit late now. So I hope that Councillor Sharp's concerns don't come into being with the new members portal. But I did wonder if there was going to be any early initial feedback as to how that was going for members, because it is actually quite a different way of contacting to have your queries resolved.
Okay, so what you're asking for, will there be some kind of evaluation of the effectiveness of the new members portal?
Yes, Chair, early evaluation.
Okay, not in 2 years' time. That's where you're arguing, right? Okay, then. Right. So, have we got any ideas about an evaluation, David?
Thank you, Chair. I can't confirm, but I'll make sure that there will be an evaluation. It's just I'm not too sure. We'll need a few weeks for it to bed in. But if you have feedback or any issues with it, then if you speak to any of the officers, then we can look into that. But the idea is there will be the response, and there will be the tracking of those responses as well.
Councillor Wilson, are you happy now? That's good to know. Okay. If we can just go to Councillor Ward, then I'll come to Councillor Stanley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is referring back to the waste management and such like. I think that should go over to environment. It's really outside of our remit, so to speak. But I had words with Caroline, and she did acknowledge that the guys coming around with the small caddies, they did need training. They weren't putting them back properly, and she was ensuring that there were follow-up people, ensuring that the caddies were going to be placed properly so they weren't all over the place. If that's not happening, that concern needs to be voiced back to environment in that way. So I think environment are probably the right area to actually deal with that directly, because that is their responsibility, that committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian Ward. So I just want to ask Councillor Stanley, would you be happy to email the Chair of Environment, or would you like me to do that as Chair of Audit?
I'll be happy if you could do that for me, please.
Okay, I'll have that a point of action, and I'll try and get that done within 5 working days. Okay, thank you.
Can I just, I wonder, Chair, if I may commend Caroline Bell for the actions that she does take when there is tips, fly tipping done in Dan Hall and Rorif, which is predominantly always fly tipped. And we do know the people that are doing it from when I was on the Environment Chair myself. And she always does tend to action it straight away and get it removed the following 24 hours. It's not always possible because of the amount that is tipped, and I really do stress the amount is enormous. It's not just something that two men can do just like that. It's quite a lot to do, and they could be there all day clearing the road. And it's generally Old London Road and Church Road that's predominantly fly tipped. And she does pull the stops out sometimes, and also at Carpenters as well. So there is quite a bit to go carry, and I do think that she needs some sort of encouragement, some commendation to that what she does is very good. Thank you.
We should certainly pass on the gold star from you, Councillor Stanley. Okay, and hopefully that sort of reassures Councillor Wilson regarding the fly tipping episode, that it does seem to be being tackled, but yet we've still got a 2-year overdueness to it, which we have raised before at this committee. Okay, and I suppose the good thing about the members' portal is we will now eventually have some hard data from an analysis of it, where we can see what the timescales are, Councillor Sharp, to members being responded to when they ask things. Okay, thank you. Right, any other questions? No. So, members, this report is for noting only. Do we note the report? Okay. Moving on to item 7, Treasury Management Report. This part begins on page 211 in your agenda pack. Once again, I'm told David Dickinson will introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'm willing to take questions, and just to highlight the outperformance from the Treasury team, and the benchmarking returns are above the benchmark, so that's positive. But yes, as I said, willing to take any questions on the report.
Okay, Councillor Stanley.
Just a couple of things that really have got to be noted in the fact that the interest that's is available to the council is diminishing rapidly due to the Bank of England's knock on the interest rate. With the next, I know we've done 2 years of reports of money situation there. Do we see anything in the following year of any upturn to our finances? Because in 2 years' time, if I might add, in 2 years' time, this will be a totally different council, and whatever there is, and I would like there to be sufficient funds to accommodate any foregoing expenses, should I say, that may be there that we need to look at in relation to pensions and so forth. So can you deliver some sort of pretext of what could happen, or what, if liability is there for us, that we can cover that?
Okay, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Chair. So overall, the forecast is for interest rates to decrease. So what we've been doing over the past 2 months is locking in just on the base cash, to say around about 15 to 18 million, which isn't going to probably be used in the next 2 years. Locking that in at sort of just above 4%, 4.5%, to overachieve on the budgets. That's secure there. But we're also mindful that the members recently agreed to use internal borrowing, which is using some of the cash to fund some of the capital program, and so we're aware that we need to have some liquidity. So there'll be a mixture of money in money market funds and money in fixed longer term, 1 to 2 year. Outside of that, it's probably too far to predict. But the budget set is quite prudent. It's around about 600,000, and we will overachieve that over the next 2 years, and then we'll hand over to the unitary some money, but also hopefully some improved assets as well. So it'll be a win-win, because money will still stay within the unitary.
Are you happy with that reply, Councillor Stanley?
Yes, I just one point that I wanted to make, which I know I'm not too sure if the council does this sort of thing, but do we ever do the stock market? Are we abreast of stock market shares and what have you, and to increase our funds of any description? Do we do that, or is that something which the council just does not do?
Okay, would you like to answer that, David?
The simple answer is no. We do have, there's a pension fund which Essex manages, and we have some exposure to that, and so there are investments there, but the council, the riskier it gets is probably in a money market fund, so it's quite low risk, AAA money market funds, or we'll into local authorities, and then we do due diligence before investing with them, but even then it's a fairly safe bet. So it's, we don't take that much risk with the investments, but we are getting a good return. I think 4.5% for last year, probably looking at about 4.25. It's reasonable. It's mainly trying to outperform the Bank of England base rate and the gilts, and just monitoring that. So I think you can get that money from having quite a low risk strategy.
Hey, thank you very much. Any other questions from members? So, Councillor Ian Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. It's always good to hear that the council is risk averse to such things. Just looking on a question that I asked before was in regards to the loan we are going to take internally. We've mentioned that, and we were looking at what would be the actual interest rate that we would charge ourselves. And I was looking at page 214, where you've put down actually an average for the amount of 4.36. Would I be correct in saying that that would be an appropriate interest rate for us to be charged to borrow our own money?
David, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Chair. So so that's how we would calculate it. It would be the average rate for a quarter, and it's effectively looking at the opportunity cost from using the money to invest in leisure in this example, and then the interest charge will go against the service. So the service would have to cover that money, that charge. That would be covered by the income coming in from leisure. So that's the approach. Overall, the interest rate should drop as each quarter drops as well, but currently 4.336 is a reasonable estimate of what it would be.
Councillor Ward, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, David. Right, so that moves. Any more questions from elected representatives? No. So let's move on to that. We're noting this report once again, members. So is this report noted?
Noted.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 8, the committee work programme. Do any members have any questions or suggestions for the work programme? If you don't say them tonight, there's always the opportunity to let me know or the Vice Chair know, and we can add them at a further date. Councillor Stanley.
Could I just ask, as the work, I obviously am not on this committee as per se, which I'm taking the place of another councillor this evening, but in the future, could we look at what we are charging ourselves as interest rate as to what the base rate is of the Bank of England, in as much as that if that goes down, which I'm assuming that it will do, will our rate go down with it in accordance as pro rata? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that's a point we can look at an additional meeting that we've got. Okay, Councillor Marriott.
Chairman, can we include training at an appropriate time, please?
Can you just expand, Councillor Marriott?
Well, training comes under this committee, and I'd just like to for us to have an update of where we are of having a training programme going on from May forwards, please. Thank you.
So are we speaking about a training programme for us being on this committee, for elected representatives to fulfil their role,
All
for-
elected representatives, sorry.
Yep, all elected representatives. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stanley.
At this moment in time, I might tell the chair that the IT part of the council is developing a training program for all councillors how to use their computers, laptops, iPads, whatever the case is, because everyone's got a different system that they're working to, in the way of they've got different handsets and different iPad. I've got an iPad. Some people have only got laptops. So there is a system being developed by the IT people themselves. They're trying to put something together so that it will give a training session to everybody, and we actually do need it desperately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. It's reassuring to know things are moving forward with training members to fulfil their role. Okay, so committee work programme then, as it is here, but we can always add things to it. Oh, sorry, Aaron. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought I'd better make it clear that we will be bringing our internal audit plan for 26-27 to the next committee meeting in March, alongside our general updates on the work that we're doing for 25-26.
I think that's why we're having the additional meeting. Sorry. Yes, because of you. Okay. Right. Councillor Ward, did you want to say something?
I think we should put something on here with the IT. It's a big changeover, and I know that some members have voiced some problems that they have found with some of the equipment and the way it's been set up with the internal servers, where certain items cannot go on those servers. So I think there may be an issue that it would be worth coming back as part of, the work programme, just to understand what the progress is, and again, looking into, in the same way that we want to look at everything that is actually going on, what's the progress and are there any problems?
Okay, and I think that's in the remit of this committee and not environment. So hopefully we can move forward with that. Okay. So again, this is for noting, members, this work programme with those additions we've heard from the elected representatives tonight. So do you note this report? Noted. Okay, thank you very much, members. So that now concludes our business for this evening at 22 minutes past 8. Thank you for your attendance, and I would indeed like to remind members there is an additional meeting that wasn't published at the start of the municipal year on March the 18th. So we do have audit on March the 18th. Okay, thank you very much.